Hey everyone. So this is going to be a review on the Reecho and Peacock Spring 1. Uh, and a lot of you, well, not a lot, but a few of you have been asking me to do like a comparison between the ThieAudio Voyager 3 and the Legacy 3. And so I'm going to talk about that because um, I won't spoil it and tell you my conclusion yet. But here's what I'll go with the IEMs and what I think about them first. You saw the unbox video, so I'm not going to show the box or any of that stuff. You're going to notice that I've got the cable that came with them over here, and I have a balance cable on them right now. I really enjoyed this cable that came with them. Very solid, positive connection. No worries on that 2-pin falling out of there, which is something I've had happen in the past. This cable, it's got a really nice color to it. Matches these things really well. They look really good on there. I don't usually care too much about that, but I really like the way these look together. The thing that I really like about this cable, though, it's not what you'd call super supple. Like this cable is like really supple and not flimsy, but just nice to the touch. This one's a little rough and it's stiffer, and I really like that. What I found is that this thing never kinked on me. I never had to fool around with it. When I took it out of however had it rolled up, and I took it out of wherever case I had it in and plugged it in, it could have been dark and I couldn't see what I was doing. It just didn't tangle on me. So big positive on the cable for that. Really like that. I wish more of them were that way. I have a balanced cable on it. And why do I have a balanced cable on it? I don't believe that balanced audio is better, in my opinion, than, at least from what I've heard. Okay, I'm not going to say I'm the end-all expert, but in my opinion, the 3.5 typically sounds just as good as balanced. Unless, and here's the caveat, unless you have something that's hard to drive, something that's not not a very sensitive component. These are not what you'd call sensitive. These are more high impedance. And so for these, with the 3.5 cable on, which it sounded great. I mean, it sounded fine with that. But I was playing it a lot on my ThieAudio DAP just because it's easy. It's really portable, and I can keep it with me pretty easily. On that DAP, I had to keep the volume up to almost 70% in order for these to sound good. And I'll give you an example. On the ThieAudio Voyager 3, I could run it at 30%, and it was more than loud enough. Like, it was very loud. 30% volume. 50% volume would be hurting my ears with that ThieAudio. But with these, I would have to get this thing to, with this cable, I'd have to get it up to 70% of the volume to really get it to where it sounded good. I was really getting everything out of these that I could get out of them, right? With the balanced cable, I only had to go to about 45%, and it was more than loud enough, right? So it made a big difference because the balanced output on the Phio, the M11 Pro, has much higher power rating than the standard 3.5 or the single-ended 3.5. You've heard me talk about this DAP, which is, can you guys even see that? Yeah, it's this one right here, the one I kind of put together myself from Monoprice Monolith THX and a Phio M6. That of course has a very high power rating, much more so than the Phio, and single-ended worked great on that. I didn't have to worry about it. I could get everything I needed without turning the volume too high. And the reason I was worried about the volume being high, because you might be asking, what does it matter? So turn it to 70%, who cares? The reason is that I would plug in different IEMs. I'm always listening to different things, comparing things, and I'm very forgetful about that kind of stuff. And the Phio would hold the volume at the last setting. So I turn it off, turn it back on, and if I were to plug in a very sensitive IEM like my Fearless S8Zs, 70% volume would hurt me. I mean, literally would hurt me, like my ears would be ringing and I was in pain. So if I forgot and I plugged them in and turned it on and just started listening without checking the volume, which I've only done once before in the last couple of years, but I mean, it's one of those things I don't want to have happen again. So I don't like it if I have to drive. In order for it to be reasonable for me to listen to have a 70% volume is not okay. So I swapped it out to the balanced cable for that reason. So that's why it's on there. So enough about that. on to the sound. These things are pretty fantastic. Now, I'm going to tell you that they're not fantastic straight out of the box, at least not for me. And what I had to do to get them to be fantastic was to get serious about swapping tips on here. And by that, I mean the tips that it came with, they're fine. There's nothing wrong with them. But I tried every single one in the box because I kept getting this strange kind of sound problems where one song sounded dull and another song sounded far away and one vocal sounded right in my face, and it just was odd sounding. It wasn't consistent. And so but I could hear sometimes something really special. So I thought, let me just get the box out that I've got that has all my tips in it. Like I've got dozens and dozens of them now. I started swapping around. I believe what I have on here are the JVC spiral dots. And when I got these on, I think they're the medium size, and put them in my ear, and suddenly it was like a new IEM. The clouds parted, the sun came through. They sounded fantastic. And that's when I was like, oh, wow, these do really compete with the ThieAudio. In fact, they might even be better. So, but before I go telling people that, because you're going to spend your money maybe based on what you hear here, I don't know. I mean, but either way, I have to take that serious, right? And I have to think about that before I start saying those things. So I started really listening carefully. I had all three IEMs with me. My wife thought I'd lost my mind. And I told her, well, these guys people are going to be listening to my review, and I got to make sure I'm doing it right. So she kind of rolled her eyes and said, yeah, whatever, go ahead. So I had these three IEMs always together in a pile someplace. The Spring ones, the Voyager 3, and the Legacy 3. And I'd listen to a song and try to really listen hard and find those areas that were special, that were detailed, that had the, where it's a cymbal strike or a hi-hat or a bass or a snare or a guitar pluck or whatever it was I was listening to, a vocal, whatever, a trumpet. And then I'd hone in on that, and then I'd swap out, put the next IEM in and listen to that again, and I'd swap out, put the next one in, and I kept doing that. And then I started working between the Voyager 3 and the Legacy 3, which you guys saw the video I did on that. And like I said, the Voyager 3, if you've already got it, you don't need to buy the Legacy 3. Don't buy it, you just don't need to, because really the only thing better than the Legacy 3 was the bass, and that got muddy in some places. So I had kind of a weird experience with it. So I finally got it to the point where the Legacy 3, for me, the vocals were better in enough songs that I was like, okay, Legacy 3, so let's put the Voyager 3 to the side. Yeah. And then we'll just compare the Springs with the Legacy 3 only. So then I started doing the Spring and the Legacy 3 with the Voyager 3 out of the picture. And it was close, except these are interesting because they have two dynamic drivers and one BA. So they have, supposedly, because I can't cut it open, or I should say I'm not going to cut it open to find out if they're telling the truth, but supposedly there's a smaller and a larger dynamic driver in here. I don't know the exact size, and a BA, and that's to handle the bass, the mids, and then of course the BA for the upper end. I think that combination, it gives just as good a bass as the Voyager 3. I'm sorry, the Legacy 3. Just as good a bass. But in many instances, the bass is much better. And by that, I mean that it's not just deep, because, having just big, boomy bass doesn't really matter if it doesn't sound right, if it's not correct, right? And these have a very tight, controlled bass. So on songs, I'll tell you, I was listening to a lot of songs, and I listen to a big variety of music, and I love female vocals. I've said that before, and these are mid-forward in my opinion. So vocals are forward on these. What I found though was that I was listening to some different female vocalists and finding ones I like with this and that kind of thing, and I was switching around to different genres of music, and I decided to listen to some Metallica, and holy smokes, when I put Metallica's, I think the album is Fade to Black, I put that on and I listened to a song and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible on these things. I ended up listening to the whole album without switching out because it just sounded so good I couldn't stop. And I thought, okay, let me put the the Legacy 3s in and listen to it on those. Sounded good, but not as good as these. And then, I listened to like Diana Krall and Amy Winehouse, and I kept trying to find something that it didn't sound good on, and I couldn't. It sounded good on everything. Guitars are incredible on this because of that dual dynamic driver. The timbre on the guitars is incredibly realistic. That's what I can say about that. Vocals, very realistic. I never really believed, or I should say never had the experience so that I could truly believe in this thing called emotional connection with music. And I've heard people say this before, like, oh, I listen to this song and the emotional connection I got from listening to this particular, song on these IEMs with this DAC and this amp, and I almost started to cry and blah, blah, blah. And I've never really had that experience because I kind of had one once with an Eva Cassidy song where it sounded really like emotional to me almost, but I actually had that happen with these for the first time, and now I know what people are talking about when they say that. And here's the crazy thing is that when that happened, I was listening to them one morning. I got up extra early. It didn't happen on just one song. It happened on like 3 or 4 albums. All the songs in the albums. It was just so incredible the way they sounded. And just as a note on those artists, the first one was Malia, and you can just look her up by that name, Malia, Malia, and she has just an incredible voice, and her style is really good. I really like her. And I've heard her on all my other IEMs in the past, and she sounded good, but not like this. I mean, it's like these were made for her kind of thing, right? It's like she tuned them herself or something. I mean, she sounded so good. And then I thought, let me try Candace Springs. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but another fantastic female vocalist. And just that tone to her voice was just same thing on these. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then, Nora Jones and Diana Krall. I mean, just everything going on. And then I kind of put them down and I went about my work day, and I listened again to the Voyagers, the Legacies some more, and I was still like, what do I say? Do I say these are better than the Legacy? Do I say the Legacy's better? Is it the same? I mean, what's my opinion? I was kind of struggling a little bit. And I listened to the Legacy like a couple days later, listened to it for a couple of different songs and another album, and I listened to some jazz. And then I put these in, and I flipped on an album, which I hadn't listened to in a long time, and it's John Coltrane and Thelonious Monk. A Love Supreme is the name of the album. And the first song is A Love Supreme Part 1. And when I started listening to it, I just kind of got lost. These sounded so good. I was stunned. There's a bunch of cymbal and snare and drum work in the beginning of that song and throughout it that is really fantastic. And the timbre of these on the bass is, it's second to none. It was excellent. And honestly, as soon as I finished listening to that, I was like, okay, it's these. I tried listening to it on the Legacies. They didn't sound anywhere near as good. These were much better than those on that song and on that album and on many, many songs. I think the thing to remember with these is the highs are not as detailed as the Legacy or as the Voyager on ThieAudio. They're very, very good. The cymbal strikes are excellent on this. Certain things like Pink Floyd On the Run. I was listening to that. There's another reviewer and he talks about the song. I like that song a lot too. And there's a lady talking at the beginning of it. I couldn't hear it that well. I could hear on these, but I couldn't, make out everything she was saying like I could on the Voyager 3. So these don't have that same detailed high, but it's still very good, like so much so that I don't miss at all the ThieAudio and the Legacy and the Voyager. The bass, superior to either one of those, for sure. The mids, superior, for sure. Now, I'm not going to say by a huge margin. It's not miles better, but it's better. And, when we're talking about IEMs, especially when we're getting into from the $100 up range, really, we're talking about incremental changes, right? I have the Fearless Audio S8Z, which is a fantastic IEM, fantastically tuned. Everything about it is good, and I really, really like that too. Of course, I think that sounds better than these. I do, but that thing's almost $600, that pair, right? So it should sound better. Now, does it sound a lot better? On some songs, yes, and on other songs, no. It sounds a little better. So when you're starting to move up in these price ranges, it's really just incremental steps. And for $129, I mean, for me, this is it. I just so you know, the ThieAudio, the Legacy, and the Voyager, I put them on eBay, and I've already sold them. They're gone. And I'm keeping these. Like I said, I've got the Fearless, which is much more expensive, but I'm keeping these. I really, really like these. For female vocals, right now with the IEMs that I have and the IEMs that I've listened to, I haven't heard everything. There's other stuff out there still for me to listen to. But at this point in time, these are the best on female vocals. And on male vocals, I was listening to Michael Bublé. I listened to Quando, 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 which I sung that I really like a lot. And some of his others too, and then Brett Eldridge and a few others, I just fantastic. So excellent IEM. It seems to be well made, beautiful case. The cable's beautiful. The cable's I really like the cable. These are hard to drive, so one of the decision points would be, if you're someone that only has a phone and wants to play it on their phone, which a lot of people do that, this isn't going to be good for that. You need something with some power. Like I said, my FiO M11 Pro drives these with the balanced cable. I can get to right around 45, 49, 50%, and then I'm good to go. I don't want to go much louder. With the cable that comes with it, 70% in order to get up there. With the Monoprice, this guy right here, probably much more power out of this, so it easily drives these. So this is a really good choice for driving these. Any desktop DAC amp combo is going to be a good choice for these, but not a phone. I don't believe you're going to get a phone that can drive these and make them sound and give you what they should be giving you, right? You're going to need some type of a DAP to do that. So that could be a point that might keep you from buying these. The Voyager 3, those were very sensitive, and you could drive them on a phone and they sounded really good. So if you're someone using just a phone, the Voyager 3 is really going to be for you. Now, as you move into dynamic drivers, it gets harder to drive. That's all there is to it. The Legacy 3s were much harder to drive than the Voyager 3. These were much harder to drive than either one of those. So, but if you've got a DAP or a source that can deliver some power, these are better, I believe, than the Voyager 3 and the Legacy 3. And that's my opinion. And everyone has their own their own experience when they listen to sound. Your ear canal shape, the way your brain's interpreting the sound, how good your hearing is. Some people's hearing's damaged a little, how old you are, all sorts of things play into it. My hearing is very good I'm in my early 50s, and I've been to the doctor to have my hearing checked, and he said it's very good. So I don't have really any hearing loss, maybe like 4 or 5%, something like that. But other than that, my hearing is really good. And the things I hear are the same things. Like when my son's listening to it, he'll point something out, and he's only 20, and he'll point something out to me, and I can hear those same things mostly. So I'm just telling you that, not that it matters, but maybe you're curious. These are a good IEM, and I definitely recommend them. For $129, you absolutely can't go wrong. I have the Fearless Audio, the S8Zs, which are $589 right now on Linsole, and those are better, but only incrementally better. They're not like miles better. I don't put those on and go, oh my God, I'm never listening to those Peacocks again. No. For certain things, I wanted to listen to these. I want to listen to certain vocals and even some jazz stuff. I want to listen to it on these before I do on those. So that's my review, and I hope it helps you out, and thank you for watching.